Today's video is brought to you in part by Audible. You can use my link, audible.com/downwardthrust, or you can text downward thrust to 500 to receive a free book and a 30-day free trial. If you scroll back towards the start of my YouTube channel, you'll see that one of my first videos was a review of none other than Overwatch. At the time, I loved it, and I spent hundreds of hours inside Blizzard's new game. I've always been a big Blizzard fan, and I probably spent way too much time playing StarCraft, Diablo, and of course, World of Warcraft. I was incredibly passionate about supporting Blizzard in any way I could, and although I lamented the critical failure of Titan, I was ready to jump into whatever it turned into. That's because when I find a company I really like, I stick with them. And for me, that was the big blue company, Blizzard. But the ironic part was, I really never got into Overwatch in the way that I thought I would. Sure, I played all the heroes, I learned all the maps, and of course opened up a bunch of shiny loot boxes, but I never felt like Overwatch was one of my quote-unquote go-to games, and that really surprised me. It never enraptured me the way Warcraft 3 did, or Brood War, never coming close to those magical feelings I had when I first set my eyes on the world of Azeroth either. Yet I continued to dabble into it over the last couple years, sometimes binging on it more than a Netflix show, other times taking breaks months on end. It was really weird. I certainly liked a lot of things about it, including the art style, how great the game ran and felt. I loved Reaper and Genji and snatching up people with Roadhog. I liked that it was cheap too, and incredibly focused on the fundamentals of team-based shooting. But of course there were the small things that definitely irked me. The casualness, shields and healing being way too out of control, to the toxicity of the community, to the simplicity of it to encourage maximum accessibility, and some of the mechanics like McCree's stun being incredibly oppressive. But I could excuse most of those for the most part. What I couldn't get past was this bigger issue I had with Overwatch that ultimately led to me quitting the game, and that is the fundamental design of the game itself. So I'd like to spend the rest of the video discussing Overwatch, generally and financially, and then talk about the reasons I'm quitting the game. Even before its release, Overwatch experienced a period of pre-release attention not typically expected in traditional first-person shooting releases. Overwatch's reputation simply permeated through cyberspace like some sort of disease, attracting attention from people who may not traditionally put down 40 or 60 bucks for a new first-person shooter. It received universal acclaim upon release, although there were definitely no shortage of crazed Titan disciples out there that boycotted this ridiculous new approach from Blizzard, because after all, Titan was supposed to be our next MMO, yet the idea was scrapped for a shooting game. And since its release, Blizzard has developed and added new characters, new maps, new game modes post-release, in addition to releasing consistent patches to balance the game. This was all the while providing additional Overwatch updates completely free of charge. They even released various comics and animated shorts based off the game too, and their plans also included a graphical novel, including stories from several in-game characters in the game. And that's not even to mention Blizzard's continued investment in the esports scene in the Overwatch League, where they dumped millions of dollars to grow the popularity of Overwatch. So it's apparent, despite various criticisms prior to its release, that Blizzard definitely believed in its beloved child resulting from the scrapped Titan project. Just 5 months after launch, Blizzard also hosted their Overwatch World Cup, allowing users to vote for teams to represent their nation or region, with finals taking place during their BlizzCon event. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and you could say that Blizzard is definitely doing a great job supporting their product. Just a year after its launch, Overwatch became Blizzard's highest grossing property, crossing the $1 billion mark in May. That's pretty amazing. During the same year, Overwatch was also claimed to be the second highest pay-to-win moneymaker as well. And a year later, Blizzard's revenue climbed up even higher, up 14%, a figure reported directly by the company. And it doesn't stop there. The popularity of Overwatch was so huge that they produced toy guns and Legos and even cereal, resulting in Blizzard's partnership with Lego and Kellogg. And believe me, I've tasted the cereal and it tastes pretty goddamn good. These secondary money outlets are just the icing on top though, as the majority of their 2017 revenue was actually commissioned by the game's micropayment systems, totaling up to $4 billion. On the books, it's one of the greatest success stories in modern gaming. Through this entire journey though, I stopped to ask myself the question, why did I never get into Overwatch the way I thought I would, and why did I stop? stop playing it. My main complaint for Overwatch is simple, and it has to do with its design as a competitive team-based shooting game. There's nothing wrong with team-based games. In fact, I play a lot of those games, including League of Legends, for example, but there's definitely downsides to them too. Number one is that you're inherently reliant on your team, and without a shadow of a doubt, this is the critical reason why so many people love or hate online team-based games, because in some of them, no matter how good you perform, you'll lose if your team sucks. And that is a huge pill to swallow. Some games like League of Legends offer a nice middle ground though, in which you can carry the game by yourself if you're good enough. Your team definitely matters as well as your composition, but if you're good enough, you can have a giant influence on how not only the game is decided, but the entirety of your game time as well. One of the things that was missing for me was this balance in Overwatch, as I felt overwhelmingly that the team size was one size too big. I never liked the 6-on-6 action of Overwatch because the higher the team size, the more spread out the power is among the team. What I mean by that is, if you want to control the outcome of the game, you have to go through 6 people, not 5. With less players, it is perhaps more tolerable and easier mechanically to carry, so I find it difficult in Overwatch because of this large team size. I understand this isn't an issue with Overwatch's team deathmatch mode, but when I play Overwatch, it's to play the main game mode. I would argue that Overwatch puts frustrating limitations on individual play because it's simply too hard to impact the game regardless of how good you are. Usually the better team wins, not because of any individual, but because the greater team is working in unison. You pick the right combination, your healer is actually healing you, you've got someone shielding you, there's a sniper in the back and a nice beefy tank standing in front of you. While individual skill is definitely important, combined power is rewarded a lot more. One of the ways Blizzard has tried to fix this was to implement what is known as Teammate Finder function, where players can group together as a comp to make the process smoother. It's a neat idea on paper, but when the shit hits the fan in the game, it doesn't fix the core problem. Individual play in Overwatch is always beaten by a unified and competent team composition because Overwatch is, well, a team-based game. You can kill Genji as Reaper in about 3 to 5 seconds. But shooting that same Genji as he is repeatedly getting healed, shielded, and buffed, the entire engagement brings that number up to like 15, 20, or even 30 seconds. If the team size was reduced to 4 or 5, that Genji would get less healing, shields, and buffs, which acts as compensation for his or her lack of skill if he, is that kind of player. Meaning all of those team-based abilities make that Genji better regardless of how bad he or she is. No matter what you do as Reaper, you have to do more than you normally would to bring him down, all the while facing the threats of the enemy team, and that's kind of the point I'm trying to make. Now take each enemy and compound the effects of team-based play across 6 people, and you're looking at some incredible obstacles for any one player to overcome. And if your team is bad on top of that, or less skilled than the enemy team, you literally have tons of digital roadblocks that you have to climb over, which makes it harder for you to have influence on the game. I understand that this is the nature of team-based games. Teamwork. But it doesn't mean that individual play has to be crippled or downplayed. You can scale back team sizes, or bring team-based abilities like buffing, healing, resurrections, or CC chains from incredibly oppressive to fair, to bring the focus towards skill, because currently it's less about skill and more about unity. This is the fundamental reason why I've decided to quit Overwatch. It's just not a fun game for an individual player. Assuming the conditions are consistently not in my favor, aka I'm getting a shitty team, I can do a lot more to overcome that in a game like League of Legends than I can in Overwatch, not the least of which, not having to deal with an extra player. These are the many hurdles put in place for a solo run-and-gun player like myself that make it difficult for me to enjoy myself in this game. This inherent sporadicness to skill levels doesn't just affect the moment-to-moment gameplay though, it affects the entire night of gaming for me. In Overwatch, I've found that there are basically 2 types of matches. You get blown out, or you blow out a team. I crave the games that come down to a wire, the back and the forth. But honestly, I don't find that many. It's old news that Overwatch's matchmaking systems have and always have been shitty at best, pitting players of all skill levels against each other, especially when 2 players of wildly different ranks queue up together. That seems natural, but even when queuing alone, you see some of the most lopsided games in the history of competitive play. I'll be the first to admit that it's not fun to lose a competitive online game. It's a lot less fun, though, to lose a game knowing that there was very little you could do to change that outcome, which cycles back to the idea I was talking about in regards to Overwatch being difficult for individual success. I'm the type of person that wants to have a big impact on how a game ends, so maybe I was never the right type of player for Overwatch. I like the idea that when I play Street Fighter, if I'm better than my opponent, I'm gonna win. I like that if I keep cool in League of Legends and keep farming my ass off even when my team is feeding up a tropical storm, I can still win that game as Master Yi. Overwatch isn't like that. It's about the small and numerous accomplishments of the many and realization that sometimes, no matter how good you aren't going to win that game. This was something I could never come to grips with. It was probably my fault for approaching a 6v6 game with the mentality of someone who wants to win every game because I was good. But it's not unfair to players to assume that their skill will play a viable role in each match, because that's what video games are all about. Yes, team-based games are about being good as a team, but I would argue the best ones are about being both good as a team and being good as an individual. Often in Overwatch, individuality gets trumped in a way that makes it hard to see that. And that is to the core of Overwatch, something that no patch can fix. I'm quitting Overwatch because of how Overwatch was designed, and that's not a problem with the game. My complaints would be hollow if I didn't give praise to the amazing work the team at Blizzard has done to make this game great for other people. Overwatch is an incredibly fun game to play when you're winning because it's one of the smoothest, polished, and most detailed shooting games on the market. Still, there's questionable consistency to Overwatch. When you lose, it's really frustrating, especially because the game focuses so heavily on team accomplishments over individual skill. So if you do really well, and you play your heart out and you still lose, it feels all the more shitty. There are large, very large gaps of satisfaction between winning and losing because of this. If Overwatch gave more focus to individual play, I feel like it'd be a great game for me, especially when the games have nice and cooperative players who are flexible with hero picks. Unfortunately, toxic players are the cherry on top to this equation, making the frustrations of losing said games in Overwatch even worse, because they rub it in your face. Overwatch isn't a bad game. In fact, it's really good. It just didn't serve me and my needs as a gamer that appreciates when team-based games are both fun in a team environment and a solo environment too. Certainly, Overwatch can definitely be enjoyed by any one gamer as an individual, but those moments are too few and far between for me. Now, before I wrap up this video, guys, I want to talk a little bit about Audible as they made this video possible. Now, the book I'm working through right now is called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Now, if you read one book in your life, I would highly encourage you to check out this book because it honestly makes you a better person. I know it kind of looks like a textbook, but trust me, it's written in a way that is really digestible to just a mainstream audience. If you've ever had a point in your life where you realize you need to work on some self-improvement, and believe me, I most certainly did this summer, this is definitely the book you want to check out. But if this one doesn't look like it's for you, you don't have to worry. Audible's actually got an unmatched selection of audiobooks on offer. And what I like about Audible is something I didn't know. You actually get a credit each month, good for any audiobook on the website, regardless of price. And your unused credits roll over to the next month. So if you didn't like your audiobook, you can exchange it, no questions asked. And plus, your books are yours to keep, no matter if you cancel your membership or not. So that's a pretty nice perk. And right now, Audible is offering a free audiobook with their 30-day trial memberships. You just go to audible.com/downwardthrust, or you can text downward thrust to 500-500 to get started today. Thanks for watching my Overwatch video today, guys. Now, the point I was trying to make was that Overwatch is not a bad game. It's in fact a really high quality game. But for me, as someone who wants a little bit more of the focus to be on individual play, I found myself in situations in Overwatch where I just wasn't having fun because I felt like the environment was so oppressive to my playstyle. So, of course, Overwatch is going to be different for everyone. You might actually love the game. In fact, I know there's a lot of people who very much do. But for me, I actually don't want to play the game anymore because this entire game design is kind of in direct conflict with how I want to play an online game. So thanks very much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. You can drop your comments down below regarding Overwatch and let me know how you feel down below in the comment section. Take care, guys.